Hi, my name is Gina Wagers, and this is Module 1, talking about educational leadership and professional capacity, strengths, and weaknesses. In summary, a few main points from the resources that were a part of this module really heavily talked about individual characteristics like your attitude, confidence, and just your intuitiveness, and some of the specific characteristics or qualities that someone might have that would make them more able to build a building culture and climate that is conducive to them leading a group of people. This kind of combines and pairs too with specific skills that leaders have to have in order to lead people, like goal setting and communication, which supports more effective decision making and leadership roles. However, in addition to those things, looking at some of the specific leadership models, a lot of the resources touched heavily on making sustainable leadership choices and how leaders need to pay attention to the systems and processes that their building is using or that their leadership style is in order to build capacity in other people so that decision making is more shared, kind of like a distributed leadership model. This can be achieved through building processes, starting with like hiring and continuing with looking at ongoing training and professional development for staff. So there's lots of different ways to build that. But these things together, the skills, the attitudes, the characteristics, and then all of these systems for making decisions are what ultimately affect effectiveness of leadership at the school level. So thinking about some of those professional capacities, the research listed quite a few of these, being able to identify goals and having the means to achieve them, reflecting on myself and my leadership capacity. I feel like I'm really good and goal-oriented, focusing on creating short and long-term goals, and then being able to allocate or designate like what resources or time is needed to achieve those things, and organizing other people to kind of support in those processes is something that I'm familiar with as an instructional coach. And a SIT coordinator, inviting people to participate and having communal attitudes about decision making. I think, again, as a SIT coordinator, we meet as teams, we make decisions for students based on what's in the best interest of those students, based on feedback from multiple people and perspectives. So I feel like that's something that I'm pretty effective at now. One thing that I do think is more developing that I'm working on improving is just mentoring and building capacity in other people. As an instructional coach, I work a lot at the classroom level with teachers, and being able to coach them and guide them to making instructional decisions in their rooms is something that is beneficial in supporting the school, its goals, and then individual students as well. Some additional capacities, being solutions focused and having a growth mindset. I do feel like I'm pretty good at that. In reflecting on my own leadership, I do like to solve problems. If people come to me with issues, I feel like that's the main focus so that you can keep that momentum and focus on your goals. Being persistent, and then being intuitive and confident. I put developing for that one just because I feel like I do a good job in the middle of a decision-making process as I have to make a decision, thinking through all of the possible outcomes and weighing options to make the best decision. But I definitely do seek support more after decisions are made, just to verify that things are going well or that I made the right decision, when sometimes I feel like that might come across as lacking the confidence in the decisions that I do make. So that is something that I think I'm working on still. Being able to manage people, data, and processes. I feel like I'm developing in the managing people aspect of that. I'm very familiar as an instructional coach and SIT coordinator having to manage data and different processes and supports. But being able to manage people on a more holistic building scale is something that I'm still working on and getting used to. Coordinating curriculum, supervising instruction, and monitoring student outcomes. Again, just my experience as an intervention teacher and SIT coordinator has really helped me develop those areas of my leadership capacities. So then what are leadership capacities and how would I define all of this together kind of succinctly? Leadership capacities are natural abilities and learned skills that allow a person to lead others effectively. And it really relies on a person's understanding of their core values, their goals, but then also, again, those specific skills that allow you to make decisions about how to manage people and systems rather than just exercising your power as a title. So really, leadership is kind of this all-encompassing, utilizing all of your skills and abilities and capacities to make all of those decisions and include other people in that process. So thinking about the way the school building might be structured and the professional capacity characteristics there, specifically with recruiting and selecting and hiring of staff, systems and processes that are structured to support those building goals are really important when you're thinking about that process, because everybody should have shared responsibility in that. And I really liked that one of those resources mentioned different structures and ways of setting up interviews or hiring of staff. Using interview processes like panels and including student input on that is a really interesting concept. While we do have the panel model here at my school, we definitely don't include students in on that process. But I have interviewed in other school districts before where there were multiple rounds of interviews, and one of them did include interacting with students. So that would be an interesting thing to look at for my building here, since we are an alternative school. Getting student input on that would be a really interesting aspect of our hiring process. At a district level, I think we're doing a lot more too as well to try to promote and recruit for our district, as many probably are due to, just shortages with teachers. So I think in those events, in those instances, it's not so much about the individual that you're interviewing, because at that point, if you're interviewing someone on a panel, they've already applied for a specific position and they probably already have a pretty good idea of what that would entail. But the district hiring fairs or career fairs are more about providing information about our district and what different positions we have available. So it's more informative and less formal. And it really gives the district representatives that go to those events more opportunity to get to know people on a more informal level, which can be very revealing and telling as far as the hiring of staff. And then also with recruiting and selecting and hiring of staff, thinking about focusing on that leadership as a collective process rather than individual traits and behaviors. Whoever is going to be part of that panel or whoever is looking at candidates, making sure that they have some kind of diversity training, or that we are having active conversations about our own biases so that we are not looking at candidates or excluding candidates because of specific factors. Collaborative professional culture. So when you think about the culture and the way that staff and people are interacting within the building, school improvement is one of those big categories, thinking of regular workshops and trainings that are collectively helping people work towards goals together, because you don't want things happening in silos and isolation. Everyone's jobs in the building support one another. And so making sure that is part of that training, I think is an important aspect of leadership. And then opportunities for peer feedback. We used to do something in our district like peer walkthroughs where we would have peer teams and we would go visit one another's classrooms once a month and fill out a form just to say things that we noticed or things that we liked, ideas that we took away. We kind of got away from that right before COVID. So thinking of ways that we can incorporate more peer feedback and review within our building, I think would be a really effective way to kind of help build leadership capacity in a lot of our staff. Thinking of teacher retention too, coaching and mentoring are a really important part of that. That's part of my role as an instructional coach, but we also have specific programs for new teachers where they get a mentor, and it's more of a long-term support, not just for instruction in the classroom, but for all aspects of what they're going to need to know for their teaching career. And then just the success and well-being of all structures and things we have in place. PBIS is a really big initiative in our district now. So thinking about incentives and ways that we're rewarding or recognizing staff and students as well for making positive choices and meeting expectations or things like that. Professional learning is a really important aspect of leadership as you're planning for and how you're going to support your staff. Thinking of that distributed leadership model, sharing of those administrative authorities and responsibilities so that everybody is accountable for all of the initiatives and policies and things that are being set in the building is really important, because you want that shared decision making and participation so that your staff feel like they are part of that. PLCs is something that we're working on developing in my building. We haven't really had those because we have such a small staff at our alternative school, but it's just having teachers build their leadership skills and their ability to influence and share ideas with others, especially, again, maybe more veteran staff with newer staff. And then having systematic, gradual, and ongoing training that just enhances those best practices, but also helps improve just that culture of the building. Because again, everybody is aligned with that same vision and mission, and they're working towards some of those same building goals to support the success of all of the students and staff in the building. So when you think about implemented system, thinking about supervision of staff at that leadership level, site-based management was an interesting concept from this module, making decisions closest to the level at which they have to be carried out. Because again, that's where you're going to gain the most feedback from people who are having to live those experiences every day. So that shared decision-making model could be very beneficial in situations like that, where you're asking things to be implemented at a certain level in a building, whether it's at a classroom level or a whole building level, to get everyone to support that idea by getting that feedback and having them make those decisions together. Support looking at the continuity of the direction and just your vision and mission in general. Because again, any of these structures or things that you put in place in your building have to be sustainable. And really, when we think about turnover of staff and other people stepping in and out of roles within a building, it has to be something that can be maintained in order for it to be successful over time. So that's an important piece of looking at that for leadership. And then the evaluation. I thought this was an interesting piece from this resource, thinking as triumphs and tragedies both, as collective rather than individual, because again, everybody is working towards those goals and doing things on their individual level in the building to support the building goals. But again, they all should be working towards that common building vision, mission, goal. And so thinking about celebrating successes, but also taking accountability for everybody holistically is an important part of leadership. And then references. Relevance here in creating the table of professional capacities, like linking characteristics of a successful leader to my skills and abilities. I gained a lot of insight about leadership capacities because I understand better that they include more than just individual skills. My understanding of leadership has broadened to include those systems and structures that leaders utilize in order to effectively manage and engage people that they are responsible for. And I also demonstrated capacity to collaboratively engage in recruiting, selecting, and hiring of staff through participating in panels and interviews here for the building in which I work. Personal reflection, I will apply the knowledge that I've gained from this research and the characteristics presented in the assignment by supporting my current administration in planning and implementing gradual and ongoing training and professional development for our staff that tie in directly with our building goals. One gap that I identified that I really want to help support and work on in our current leadership practices and is our use of PLCs. I'd like to find more opportunities to build capacity in our staff here to make collaborative decisions regarding their teaching practices by maybe partnering veteran teachers with newer teachers so that there's more peer feedback opportunities within the building.